Thanks for joining us for this week's live Q&A. If you've got questions, put it in the comments below. Today we're discussing where can you keep bees. And this is a great example of how you can keep bees on a balcony. And this little hive's been up on the balcony here for years actually, since Sophie caught the swarm on the mango tree. And they're doing very well, and you can tell by the bee numbers. If you look at the entrance, and observations from outside of the hive are a great thing to help you learn about what's going on in your hive. So here we've got a bit of a bee beard, it's called, when it hangs down from the landing board, which can be a sign that they are preparing to swarm. But in this case, I think they are just a bit crowded and they need a bit more space. But a good idea to do your spring management. We're in spring here in the southern hemisphere. Make sure you've got enough space in the hive for all of your bees. Otherwise, it can trigger the hive to swarm. Depending on the genetics, sometimes they're more swarmy, sometimes they're less. But the swarm is when half of the bees push out the old queen and they go off and they find a new home. We're looking in the window, we can hardly see the comb. We've got a lot of bees at the entrance, so this hive we do need to make some space in, and my favourite method for that is taking a split, because that means you get another hive, and if you don't want one, somebody else really will. In fact, often somebody will come and take a split from your hive, which helps them and helps you in the springtime when the bees are really busy like this one. If you've got questions, put it in the comments. The other thing we're noticing in this hive is, and it's really even hard to see because there's so many bees, but you can see at the back here, it is totally loaded with honey because it's the springtime, and you can see the capping that the bees have put on each frame. So another thing to do is harvest the honey, make some space in the hive for the bees to store more honey. Otherwise they tend to really put a lot of honey down in the brood nest, which is not what we want, because that's where the queen is laying her eggs. And if you get into the situation where there's not enough space for the queen to lay, that is a trigger for the hive to swarm. So being springtime, we need to watch that. That's usually when the hives will swarm if they're going to. You can get some late swarms, but generally it's a springtime thing. So down in the bottom here, we've just got these wooden wax frames, perfectly natural for the bees to draw their wax on. I like to just put the comb guide and for them to draw the wax themselves. We're not putting these in a centrifuge, so there's no need for the plastic foundation in the brood nest. Just wood and the natural beeswax down here in the brood box, and then when they're ready they can come up, store some honey in the flow frames. So let's harvest some and go through a few things while we do it. And today we're on a balcony, and one of the common questions we get is, where can I keep bees? Can I keep bees at my place? So bees are quite versatile, especially with the Flow Hive, because it only takes up this small amount of room you see here. The whole harvesting shed that you once had to have, where you had your decapping line, your stainless steel benches, your centrifuge, all of that jazz, your sieving bucket, is all built right into the hive now. So let's harvest some honey, but that's a really good reason to keep flow hives on your balcony, because you no longer need to junk up your apartment or place with all of that equipment. Everything's built right in, and I'll show you how easy it is to harvest if you haven't seen that before. The rear door becomes the harvesting shelf. We've got our little honey jars gift set here we'll be harvesting into today, which has nice little printed labels on it of varying designs. Let us know what you think of those. But here we've probably got a lot of bees too. Look at that. So we know we've got a lot of bees in this hive. We need to start harvesting some honey. So what we're going to do is choose a frame. Anyone will do at the moment. We know there's a lot of honey in here, and we might even get a couple going just to make some space in the hive. You take out that little cap there at the bottom, and that way we put the little tongue right into that point there, And then what that does is an important little job for you without you even thinking about it. It clears out the little leak back point here, and then we're actually ready to turn the key if we put it into the bottom slot here and just turn it. Now if you do it in segments, it does make it easier. Sometimes you can get into the situation where the wax is soft enough you can do it all in one go. Other times it is nice just to segment it a bit like that, and that just makes it easier. You can do it in small segments or you can do it in large ones, doesn't really matter, but you can see the honey flowing there now, and it's quite a light colour. One of the amazing things is the different colours you tend to get from the single hive and different flavours, and that's one of the real joys and unexpected side benefit of harvesting in this way with our Flow Hive invention is the isolating the honey flavours. Any questions coming in?
Yes, here's a good one. Is it, from Luca, is it dangerous to put the Flow Hive in a small field with vegetables, so I guess their garden, and there's 2 or 3 people around it?
Okay, so beehives are generally kept either in small fields, backyards, balconies, and it's actually the genetics which will determine whether your hive has more aggressive traits, i.e. stinging people around. So if you find your hive is bothering people, then the thing to do is change the queen for new genetics. And of course, know your first aid around stings, and position your hive so the flight path is where nobody's walking. If we had the hive the other way around, so the flight path was this way, then people will be walking in through here and end up with bees in their hair, accidental stings on the head, and all of that kind of stuff. Whereas if you think about positioning your hive so that the bees can get up and away, that's a really nice thing to do, because that means the bees get a clean flight path without having to bother anyone. So it's very common to have beehives in proximity to people, but it's a good idea to think about it and make sure you're being smart about the positioning, and also making sure you've got a friendly hive if it's in close proximity. Okay, look at that. That is absolutely beautiful. A very light colour today. Yum. I'm going to taste that. Oh, that is beautiful. That's a blow your taste buds off flavour. That is the wild quince, which flowers at exactly this time of year. You can see some flowering in the valley below, and that is just a gorgeous flavour. I love it because it's so floral and so light as well. Let's get another one going, and what we'll do is put in this little tube again, and then we can have fun swapping more jars. It's a great kind of family experience, and I never get sick of just watching the honey just pour right out of the hive and testing out your skills on swapping the jars. Yum. Look at that. More very light honey. Any more questions coming in?
Yep, see, David's tuning in here in Australia, Western Australia, in Perth, on the other side of where we are. He's just wondering, he's just set up his Flow Hive and wondering when what he should look for when he does his first inspection, and when should he do it?
Okay, good one. So you've just set up your Flow Hive, you've put your bees in your brood box, and you probably don't have your super on yet. So it's a great time, and a great part of the learning is inspecting when the colony's building, because you get to watch what's happening, you get to get more familiar with the bees. I'm getting a little buzzy bee here, which you sometimes get. We have been stirring up the bees a bit this morning, so I'm just going to put my veil on, which is always a good idea to have handy, or a good bee suit. So depending on what you're doing, if you've filled your box with the naturally drawn frames like this with just the comb guide, good idea to inspect every few weeks, just in the beginning, until they're using all of the frames in the box, which may only take a month. And that means that if they are going off this comb guide, you can just gently push them back on, and it saves cleaning that up later. And we're getting a lot of beautiful honey here. Look at this. Yum, yum. Look at that, so light. The other one's very light too, so it looks like we're all on the wild quince honey today. Yeah, so the main thing as a new beekeeper you'll be doing is just familiarising yourself about how the hive works, enjoying watching them build. Don't try and do everything at once, but eventually you will be noticing changes and deciding whether you need to do anything about it. Now, WA, you don't have varroa mites yet, so you don't need to worry about that. And hopefully you'll never get them over there on the other side of the country. But what you'll be doing is just checking you have a laying queen, which is the main thing you're checking for, is that your hive is what's called queen right. So the easy way to do that is to look for the young larvae down the cells in the worker brood. So if you've got lots of young larvae glistening, you don't necessarily need to find the queen, then that's a sign that your hive is doing well, your queen's doing what she needs to do, and you can put it back together, thank them for allowing the intrusion, and enjoy watching them build up. And when they are using all the frames in the bottom box, that's the time to put your super on. In our case, it's the Flow frames or Flow Super, which is our honey collection box that allows you to harvest honey like this in this easy way. And look at the honey just pouring out. Springtime is really an exciting time with a lot of honey just pouring out, pouring into the hives. The bees are literally finding flowers that are dripping to the ground with nectar, and they can, in an extreme case, in some parts of the world, and up in Canada they really boast, they can fill one of these boxes in a single day. Here the quickest we see it is about a week, and if we harvest all these frames now, a week later they'll probably be full again. Another reason to harvest honey when you see it's really filling, because that way you can store a whole lot of honey in jars on the shelf for times when there's not a lot around, and that way you can fill your larder with beautiful honey you can share with friends and family. Okay. Keep those questions coming in.
Yes, Ed, I have to mention Clinton's comment. He's saying, oh no, another video where all the watchers are screaming out, change the jar. I'm sitting here too going, quick, change the jar.
Well, yeah, so far I'm doing okay.
He's doing pretty good, Clinton. I think we're okay.
But yeah, it's a fun little game. Nice thing to do with your family is sit around harvesting the honey. I thought we might get a few different colours today, but it looks like we're getting all of the same one. Although it looks like there is slight variations if you look at the colour, but only slight. Now, I did overfill that one, so we'll need to clean that one up, but it's really a low mess situation compared to the old way of harvesting where you've got a whole shed full of mess.
I'll keep firing at the questions at you, see, so you get distracted, and we'll see if you can spill one over.
Okay, okay.
Hey, Andrew's in the USA in Ohio, and he's just wondering, could he leave the plastic flow frames on during winter?
Yes, you can. It's a personal choice in a way, where you can leave the flow frames on for the bees to consume the remaining honey. But a lot of beekeepers do reduce the size of their hive when you've got a long, cold, snowy winter, and so if you've got, you might decide you want to take the Flow Super off, but you also might decide to leave it on. But the main thing you'll be doing is reducing the size of your hive a little bit, and uh-oh, we've got a problem where we have no more jars. They're full of honey. Is a little problemo. There we go.
Oh, it's going to happen.
Gee. That was a bit of a catch me out scenario. We managed to get away with it so far. Okay, Trace has gone down to grab a few
Soph's
more
gone to get some. There's a couple
jars,
of littlies.
a couple of littlies in
until
case we
Soph
need them.
comes.
Thanks, Trace. Yeah, always a good idea to have some jars on hand. In this case, it looks like some of them were already full of honey in here. And look at the difference in colour last time we harvested. Isn't it just gorgeous? Okay, we're getting the honey really pouring out today, so it's keeping me on my toes. And we can just keep stashing the jars down here and yeah, look at the colour differences. It's great. Or up on the railings, not a bad idea. Okay, we got another one to swap. Beautiful. Now, if you were entering a honey competition, you would be making sure the honey's filled just up to the start of the neck of the jar. In this case, I've been overfilling them a little bit, but that's okay. All right. Keep the questions coming in. Today we're discussing where can I keep bees. Now, a balcony is a fun location and people do that in the cities, in apartments. My sister kept bees in Berlin on a balcony, a number of hives on a small little balcony, and she was collecting the linden honey from over there. It's a very prized, beautiful honey there, and that worked very nicely. So city beekeepers do boast they get a longer season because of all the different things people are planting and even a wider variety of honey than out here in the farmland. So, of course, though, you can keep bees in the farmland or in the backyard is very popular for keeping bees in urban areas. And the great thing about bees is you don't need to have a garden full of plants. They are spreading themselves out over potentially a 6 mile, 10 kilometre radius and bringing all of that nectar back into the hive and creating the beautiful thing we call honey. And look at it, it's just a gorgeous thing. Everyone loves honey.
So as you were just talking about, and this sort of is a perfect example, Kevin's wondering, so what does make the colour difference in these honeys?
So the colour difference is simply set by the flower. So the nectar in the flower, be it a very faint colour, is there. And if they're collecting from, in this case, it was the wild quince that's just been flowering, then it'll be this light colour. But if you were harvesting it earlier on in our season, actually in our winter, we get these colours, which are the paperbark or the melaleuca, which is called the rain tree. So this rain probably won't set off the melaleucas now. It's more of a late summer through till spring time for that melaleuca. So all of the trees have a different flowering time, and depending on the weather, depending on the season, they may or may not flower. And there's as many different colours and flavours as there is nectar producing flowers in the world. And not all flowers produce nectar as well. Some of them will just have the pollen for attracting the bees, and that's the important protein source for the bees as well. So there's a lot in it, but basically the short answer is different flowers produce different honey, and this is the paperbark and that is the wild quince.
Right. Zita, Emma's lives in an area where they get quite a bit of snow, and just wondering, how do they keep their hive nice and warm through winter?
Okay, so long snowy winters, what people generally do is they reduce the size of their colony a little bit in preparation for the winter. They also make sure there's enough stores in there, and if the bees don't have enough honey to survive a long cold winter, and in some places you'll need an ideal box full, some places you'll need a full box full of honey to survive right through to the next spring. And that is how the bees keep warm, is they consume the honey, that's their carbohydrate, and they shiver really, they vibrate and become heater bees, and they're able to keep themselves warm through that long cold winter, and they're very good at that. That's how they've evolved. Now, if you do want to start insulating your hive, that is a popular thing to do with wrapping something around your hive, but it is argued a little bit in those cold climates whether you should or not. The one place that isn't argued is under the roof here. A lot of insulation up top here is really helpful because you won't get condensation on the underside of the inner cover, and that's a good thing because moisture collecting on the underside of the inner cover and dripping onto the bees when it's cold isn't a good thing. However, some beekeepers will argue that it's important to let the colony get cool, because that way they go into a proper hibernation mode, allowing them to last a bit longer. And others will argue that condensation on the inside of these walls is a good thing also, because it's a water source for the bees. And others will argue that no, you should insulate your hive with hive wraps and blankets or whatever you've got to help your bees out during the winter. But if you're unsure, in that really cold time, do insulate under the gabled roof here using perhaps an old poly box or an old pillow or whatever you like, just to add some extra insulation up here on top of the inner cover. And the other thing to do in those colder climates, apart from reducing the size of your colony and making sure there's enough honey stores, which may mean feeding them prior to the winter with some sugar syrup, is removing the queen excluder. So in between these two boxes we have the queen excluder. You want to take that out as the minimum thing to do prior to a long cold snowy winter, and that way when the bees cluster together to keep warm and move through the hive to consume the remaining honey up the top, the queen can travel with the cluster. If she's left behind, she will perish. So that's an important thing to do, is remove that queen excluder as part of your winter preparation.
Great. So it's got a couple of questions on adding an extra super to your Flow Hive. One is, can you add an extra super? And then the other question is, Cedar, if you do add an extra super, should you put it on top of your existing super or underneath?
Okay, so it depends on what you're trying to achieve as the beekeeper. So this hive, one strategy could be to add another super to make the hive bigger, and that way more space for all these bees that are starting to beard at the front, more space for the bees to store honey. You can see how crowded they are inside here. More space for the bees to really store their honey, which means they're less likely to get honey bound, it's called, where there's too much honey down in the bottom box and nowhere for the queen to lay. So adding another super, you could put either on top or you could put it in between the two, and either one is actually okay. So commercial beekeepers usually under super, because bees do like to stash the gold at the back of the nest away from the entrance, and that way it's harder for robber bees to get all the way through to steal the gold. So that's why you see beehives configured in this way, where the brood nest is down here and the honey is up the top. So if you go and put another super on, you can put it underneath, and that'll be closer to their natural configuration. However, you can just put it on top as well if that's easier, and the bees will sort it out and start using it. If you're adding another brood box, then it would go in between, because you're wanting it to become a brood box where the queen can also lay in. And if you're using it for honeycomb collection like Trace does, then you can add another little box on top, and that just makes those frames easy to access. So you can have honey on tap here and honeycomb up the top, and that way you can collect some honeycomb as well. Lots of options for you. I tend to run the hives in a very simple configuration to keep it very easy to manage. You've only got one box to remove, or with our super lifter open, and then only one box to look through if you need to find the queen. So that just keeps it easier. And I just take splits in the springtime, which is my go-to for reducing congestion. And this hive we do need to take a split from.
So it's Karen, she loves these videos and also just wants to know, getting her nuke on Saturday of bees, her box of bees, just wondering when's the best time to put them into her hive. Is it at dusk?
No, the mid-morning to mid-afternoon is the best time to do your beekeeping. So you've got your nuke box, which is like a mini little starter hive, if you like. It's like one of these brood boxes cut in half. It could be wood or it could be made just out of core flute. You've picked up those bees from a bee breeder. You've put it in your yard where you want to put your hive, and it's this exciting moment where you're getting ready to move those, move that colony, including all of the wooden frames, or there might be plastic frames down there. Who knows what you've got off the bee breeder, and it doesn't really matter. There's everything that the bees need there in terms of the honeycomb, in terms of the brood, the queens laying her eggs. You've got a going little mini hive with 4 or 5 of these frames in the bottom. Mid-morning to mid-afternoon is when you generally want to do the beekeeping, and that's when the bees will be the calmest. You get in your bee suit, you get out your smoker, and you're simply shifting these frames into your bottom box. So try and keep it roughly in the same location as you've had your nucleus colony. If you move it too far away, then the bees will get a bit confused. They do really geolocate to the spot. So a good idea to just even move that little nuke box over, set up your Flow Hive. If you've got the stand, you'll be setting up that. Then set up your brood box, and you won't need your super yet. Smoker, bee suit, gloves if you're new to beekeeping, transfer them into your bottom box, look after them and they'll grow. And once they're using all the frames, you can go ahead and put on the Flow Super. So exciting. Let us know how you go starting up your new Flow Hive. Okay, another jar to swap. Things are slowing down now. You notice that most of the honey flowed out in the first 10-15 minutes, and then it slows down after that. And you can get quite a few more jars if you're patient, or it's not a good idea to stop it too early because a lot of honey will go back into the hive. But when it really slows down, you can then cap it off and leave the remaining honey for the bees to lick up and redistribute in the hive. Look at that, gorgeous light wild quince honey. It's just tastes amazing. It's one of my favourite flavours actually. Some people don't like it because it's quite strong, but I love it. It's like a, it'll blow your taste buds off flavour that we get only this time of year in the springtime. And every second year is a better flowering.
So how do you test whether you've got the right moisture content in the honey?
So if you want to test moisture content, then you'll use what's called a refractometer. And that relies on how light travels through different mediums to refract the light and give you a reading. So what you'll be doing is just getting a little bit of honey like that and smearing it on a little bit the glass area of the refractometer, closing it up, looking through it, and it'll say what moisture content it is. And you want it down below that 20% range to keep for a long time on the shelf. If you've accidentally harvested a bit early, let's say the frame wasn't capped or for whatever reason, the honey is really quite liquid. It'll always look quite liquid when you've just harvested it because it's warm. But if it cools down and it's really quite liquid in the jar, then chances are it's got a high moisture content. It won't keep on the shelf, and you should consume that or use it before fermentation occurs. Now, refractometer is something that you can purchase in order to just test that moisture content, and a handy tool if you are selling your honey and you want to make sure it's a good moisture content for your customers so that it won't start fermenting.
It's Mark's up in Brisbane, so just a few hours north of here, so similar climate. Just wondering, they've got a couple of hives. If they had a couple of hives in an urban area, what would be the best way to avoid them swarming?
Okay, so this time of year, it'd be just doing your spring management. Now, what we do as beekeepers, and especially if we're in an urban area where, as you say, we don't want them to swarm because we don't want half the bees taking off and landing on your neighbour's washing line, for instance. If they do, then you know, chances are you can go and put them in a box and get another colony. But often you're not home and they could get away and set up in somebody's wall or something like that. So ideally, as you say, you're limiting them from swarming, and the main thing to do is make sure the queen has enough space to lay her eggs. So harvesting the honey and making space in the hive is a minor trigger, but that's a good one to do. And these frames are all full, so we're harvesting a few to make some space, so any more nectar they bring in, they're able to store up here instead of taking up space down in cells down the bottom here that would have been useful for the queen to lay. So that's one of them, but the major trigger is actually overcrowding. So looking in the window here, you've got a lot of bees. So this hive is at risk of swarming unless we get ahead of the curve, do something about it. We're probably a little bit late on this. We might find they do swarm unless we get in there soon and take a hive split, which is my go-to. You take potentially half of the frames out. You could do a small split where you just take maybe 3 frames, or you could take 4 frames of brood out, which would be an even split on this size hive, into another brood box, and then that will radically reduce the congestion in the hive. The bees will quickly draw more comb this time of year, and there'll be plenty of area for the queen to lay. And while you're doing it, you may even find they've already raised a queen cell, and you can put that straight into your split. So a great thing to do in the springtime is take splits from your busy hives. However, if you don't want another hive, then you could make more space by adding another brood box or adding another super, and that will mean there's a lot more space in your hive for your bees, and that will really help reduce the chances of swarming. Sometimes you can get a bit of bad luck and you've got genetics that are swarmy anyway, and despite your best efforts of making some more space in the hive, they do swarm anyway. But we generally try to limit our swarming by making more space. And another technique is cutting out some comb, which is easy to do if you're using naturally drawn comb. Usually on the edges, if they're getting honey bound this time of year, you've got a lot of honeycomb just on the edges. You can simply chop that out with a knife, put that on a plate to take away to your next party, and this frame is now empty, and you can put it straight back in the center of the brood box. That'll help limit swarming also. It's another technique that beekeepers do. So let us know how you go, and it's an exciting time of year with the spring flowers on while the bees are really building up.
So Diana had a bit of an issue. The last harvest that they did, saying that the honey started to pour out before they'd even put the tube in, made quite a mess, and just wondering what would have caused this, please. I'm not sure if they'd already cracked the frame, not sure where they are.
Okay, so I'm making the assumption that you hadn't turned the key yet. So, but the order of things would be just in case, would be to put your tube in, put your jar under, and then turn the key. But assuming you did that, what you probably found, and let's see if I can't find an example of it here, but sometimes you can find that when you take this cap out, some honey comes out before you've even started harvesting. And that can be because of honey building up in this trough area. Perhaps the bees didn't seal all the cell parts of our flow frames, and some honey dripped through while they were creating it. Another reason can be after your last harvest, the remaining honey was left in this trough area because the leak back point was blocked. Now, I'll just show you that, and it's a little bit hard to see in this light, but if you have a close look, there's a little gap between the flow frame yellow part and the clear part, and that's on purpose, and that's called our leak back point, which means when you're finishing harvesting, that should be clear, and we've made that auto clear by this little tongue. When you put that in, make sure you give it a wiggle, and that does open up that leak back point for any honey to go back in. If you find that that is building up, and some colonies will do it and some won't, but you've got honey building up in here while they're making it, and one simple thing you can do is simply turn this little cap around. It often breaks that seal, and that honey that's built up in there can go back into the bees to reuse. If it's been in there for a long time, it's starting to go fermented in a humid climate, then what you want to do is quickly take out that cap and swap it for that. Yes, you get a little bit of honey there, but if you're quick enough, then you can drain away any honey that might have built up in there and gone fermented. If it tastes good, you can just put it in your jar and continue harvesting.
So someone got our super lifter recently and just loving it, but of course have realised that now that they've got the super lifter on, they can't use what we used to use, the harvesting shelf on the side to hold their frames.
Ah, yes.
Any tips on that?
Ah, yes, we have a fix for you. Here it is, our new frame rests, which are a bit of an upgrade from the harvesting shelf brackets. If you still do want to use the harvesting shelf brackets, the tip is you'll be putting them right down low, down here, out of the way of the super lifter mechanism. Now, if you don't have a base like this, or you've got a lot of foliage down there, maybe that won't suit you, and you can use our harvesting shelf brackets, which I think are on back order now. Are they in stock again,
Yeah.
Trace?
No, I think you're right. I think Australia end of the month and the US, yeah, I'm not 100%, but if you're, just contact customer support and they can help you out as well.
Okay, great. We're a little bit of back order at the moment, but they are a popular item here. And they are designed to work perfectly with the super lifter. So this little arrangement here gets right around the super lifter mechanism and allows you to have your frame rests right up top where you might like them while you have the super lifter on. It's also got an adjustment here for if you're using hives with thicker walls, a classic or a standard laying box, then this pad comes off, turns around and goes back on, and we've written classic on there. If you've got classic out, you're on a thicker wall box. If you've got our Flow Hive 2, it'll be this way.
See, the new beginner beekeepers, so there's a few questions coming in today, like where should I begin, how should I start, how close can I have it to my house?
Okay, so let's start with the theme of this live stream, which is where can I keep my bees? Really common question, and the answer is bees are incredibly versatile, and here we have them on a balcony, and that's a wonderful thing. Of course, you want to point them so they go out and away, so they're not flying into your house or where people are walking, but that is a common thing to do in the city, even in apartments, in the high rises, is keeping bees and being able to really get some quality produce without even having land. So that's why beekeeping in the cities is very popular, whether it be on the rooftop or balconies or in urban backyards. So in our Flow Hive's case, it's even better than a conventional beehive because the whole harvesting room, which you once had to have with your centrifuge, your stainless steel benches, your decapping knives, your sieving buckets, all of that, a shed full of sticky boxes from taking them off the hives. It's all built into your hive now. It's simplified all of that mess and all of that room into this super box here. So that means that makes it ideal if you don't have the space or don't want all of that mess of paraphernalia or hard work in conventional harvesting. So people often ask, as a new beekeeper, should I start with the conventional hive or should I go to the Flow Hive? And we've designed the Flow Hive to be a lot easier. Just as we were saying with the harvesting, it's very much a turnkey solution for harvesting without all of that space and all of that mess you once had. So that's a whole learning curve you don't need to go through as well, and a whole lot of equipment you don't need to purchase. So the Flow Hives are great in terms of the harvesting, and in terms of the looking after your bees. Just like any beehive, you still need to do what's necessary in your area to look after your bees. And we have designed the super lifter. Have a look at that product, which makes it easy also to lift off this top box in a nice, easy, open box way. So we have also designed in features that make it easier to look after your bees with the pest management tray down here. Whether you're managing varroa or hive beetles, or just keeping an eye on your hive, that pest management tray is great and makes beekeeping easier again. So we're always innovating to make things easier, and would really recommend starting with our Flow Hive. And if you can get the Flow Hive 2 Plus with all the bells and whistles to make things easier. Now, your question was also about how to get started. So the process is a fascinating learning journey, and what you do is you get your equipment, you put it together, which is a fun little project. People often enjoy that. You'll then put your favourite coat on. In this case, we haven't put a coating on this hive, we're just letting it slowly go grey, but often you'll see more of a deck stain, or perhaps you decided to paint it with your artistic talents. And once you've got that ready, you can then install your bees, provided it's the right time of year. Obviously, if it's it's snowing or it's a really cold winter, that's not when you'll be installing your bees. It'll be somewhere, usually, well, it depends. If you're in a subtropical region like this, you can actually start any time of year, because we get honey flows right through winter. But in most places, you'll be starting your bees in the early spring or in your summer, or sometimes in the fall, depending on your location. So in order to get started, as we were talking about earlier, probably the easiest way is get a nucleus of a bee breeder, which is just a going little mini hive. On a nice warm sunny day, get out your bee suit, get out your smoker, and install those frames, which will look like this, but they'll be built out with honeycomb, and perhaps all the things that the bees need to have a going little mini hive. So the queen will be laying her eggs, you'll have brood, you'll have pollen stores, and you'll simply put those into your bottom box and look after them, and they will grow. And when they are using all of the frames, that's when the top box goes on. So that's probably the easiest way to get started. Got lots of videos on this. Other ways are you can take a split from a friend by taking some of the frames out of their hive. You can order what's called a package, which is a bunch of bees in the mail, which you shake in and they can start like that. And you can also catch a swarm, which is a more adventurous way, but it can be a fun way to get started, where you find a swarm of bees hanging on a branch and you shake them into your bottom box, and they will start building comb very quickly, and that's another way to get started. If you dial back several videos, you'll see us catching a swarm live, and then you'll see us inspecting that swarm a few weeks later. If you have a look at the beekeeper.org, we have a dedicated online course for those who want high quality video training. Experts from all over the world have made great content for that. It gets rave reviews. Also is free to try and a great fundraiser. And we've supported dozens of projects all around the world, and worked with high quality ecosystem restoration projects, and now planted 1.5 million trees to create billions of blossoms for bees and everything that needs that habitat. So have a look at the beekeeper.org if you do want a dedicated online course there to get started in beekeeping. And I'm here each week answering questions.
William's in the UK, Cedar, and it's been cold down to 10 degrees, so getting a bit chilly over there. Had a frame full of honey, all capped, looking great, but when he cracked the frame, absolutely nothing came out. He's just wondering any suggestions as to maybe why that would have happened.
Okay.
It's in the UK as well.
So there could be a few things. Now, it's rare, but in some cases you can get honey that doesn't come out because perhaps it got really cold and was candied. To test that theory, try one that's more central in the hive and see if it will come out, because that's right above the brood nest and it'll be keeping warmer. The other occasional thing that can occur is what's called thixotropic honey, which could be from the heather honey in your region, and that sets like jelly in the frames and might be hard to get out. We find here when we get thixotropic honey, if it's about a 50-50 mix, which it often is, it'll come out in globules. If it's 100% thixotropic honey, then it'll stay in there, and it's a pain to harvest no matter what type of beekeeping you're doing. It stays in the frame and won't liquefy very easy. So that could be it. Of course, checking you are going in the bottom slot, making sure you're turning the key and the mechanisms lifting properly. In some cases, the bees will really stick their flow frame parts together really quite tightly, and you might need to leave the key in there for a while just to see if the parts will lift. But if they are lifting, and you can sort of feel that, you turn the key and now the key's in that bottom slot and I'm able to move it back and forth. But if it's still just really jamming and it's, half an hour later there's still a lot of force on the key, it could actually be the mechanism not moving. And if that's the case, get in contact and we'll help you with some techniques to free up that mechanism and make sure your frame is operating correctly. So contact customer support, give us a little bit more information and we'll help you with that one.
A few people say they're in the US, Chicago, New York, where it's starting to get pretty cold, and just wondering what's the best way to manage those hives. And then a few people are saying, how do you stop the bees from freezing if it's snowing outside, and can you keep bees in that kind of climate?
Yes, absolutely. So Apis mellifera, which is the European honeybee, we all know humans have taken them all around the world wherever they go, but they originated in Europe where there's a very cold climate and very long, cold, snowy winters, so that's what they are used to. And the reason why they store so much honey is to survive through till the next springtime. This is their larder. They're squirreling away that nectar, turning it into honey so they can use it to survive on. So the main thing you'll need to be doing is making sure there's enough honey stores for your hive to survive through to the next spring. If they don't have enough, you'll be feeding them some sugar syrup, ideally prior to winter. So if you notice that there's not much in the way of stores in your hive, then prior to winter you'll be mixing up what's called a thick syrup, which is 2-to-1 ratio sugar to water, 2 parts sugar, 1 part water. You cook that up, let it cool, and put it in your chosen feeder, and that way your bees will have something to survive on if they can store a bit of that. If you've left it too late, then what you might need to do is give them some fondant to survive on, or even dry sugar feeding by just pouring some dry sugar into one of your empty frames in order for your bees to have something to survive on through to the spring. We did talk about insulation earlier. One place that's not argued to insulate is up here in the gabled roof. So you could put some insulation up there for that long winter. Make sure your covers are on. And if you are getting snow build-up, when you can get out there, when you get a warmer day, just clear the entrance and make sure that the bees can fly out, because as soon as you get one day that's a bit warmer, your bees actually don't go to the toilet in the hive. They're very good like that. They'll actually hold on and wait till the day when they can fly out and then go back. So clearing that entrance away and making sure that we'll have a natural amount of bees that will perish in the hive, making sure that entrance is clear from perhaps a build-up of dead bees at the entrance is another thing to do in that long cold winter. But we've got dedicated videos showing you how to overwinter in those cold climates if you have a look at thebeekeeper.org.
Great, and then we have sort of the opposite question now, Seed. Someone in Western Queensland where it gets really hot, over 45 degrees, and they're wondering, can they keep a beehive?
Yes, they're incredibly versatile. So bees are kept in the hot, humid areas like yours. They're kept in the hot, dry deserts. They're kept in the cold, snowy regions, and they're kept in the subtropics here as well. So very versatile species. They're amazing at air conditioning, which means when it's really cold, they will actually disconnect their wing muscles, vibrate, warm the hive, and they will consume honey as their fuel source to keep the hive warm. And in a hot climate like yours, what they'll do is collect water. Now usually they can fly out and find water somewhere, but if it's a drought, then maybe putting some water out for them will help your bees in that really hot time. They can collect the water, they can fly back to the hive, they will fan that water droplet and spread it out, and that will cool the hive with evaporative cooling. And that way they are actually able to keep this brood nest at between 35 and 36 degrees through that whole hot time, which is incredible, and through colder times. Although in the very cold winter they will decide, oh look, one bee's come for the honey. They will decide to cluster, stop raising brood, and let the colony drop in temperature. So amazingly versatile. And yes, you can keep bees in those hot climates. They will enjoy a little bit of shade on those hot summer afternoons if you can give it to them. But you'll see that most beekeepers are keeping their hives just out in the paddock in the full sun. We have time for another question as we wrap this up. Now, we did have a bee that just fell into the jar, which can happen. And if you are finding a lot of bees are going after the honey, you may need to cover your jars as you're harvesting. But here we go. It's easy enough to just fish out like that. And what I'll do is I'll put it straight back on the landing board, and these bees will just clean that up. Let's see if I can get it to come off. There we go. And you watch, those bees will start licking at it instantly. Look there, that was the bee we put, and the bees are already cleaning it up, and that bee will be just fine. Okay, so little tips on finishing your harvesting process. Now, you could wait and probably fill this jar, but I'm going to get a bit impatient and close this frame by inserting it in the top slot like that, all the way till you feel the knock at the back. A little tip is make sure it does go all the way to the back. If you close it there, there'll be a section of the frame that actually isn't closed properly. So we go in, we turn it like that. Easy to turn when you're closing it. Now, a tip is leave it there while you're packing up for a minute or two if you can, and that way all of the cell parts will be pushed into their correct position. If you do a little quick close, some might bounce back up. You get a lot of wax put in these wobbly shaped cells, and that will impede the honey flow next time. In order to finish off our harvesting, we need to take this tube out. You're doing the quick swap here, and usually you can do it without even spilling a drop of honey, like that. And then the only messy thing is this tube to clean up, which is worlds away from the mess you normally create harvesting in conventional ways. Now, I could leave that on the edge of the jar for the remaining honey to go in, or I could enjoy just eating the spoils there and tasting the honey. And we didn't harvest this one, but we'll put the cap back in anyway, and we will also now move the key to this one. So we've had that in there for a minute, and now we move it onto this one. We close it, and that's setting all of the flow frame parts into the cell formed position again. Again, we're just hot swapping for this, and we can just put that there. And beautiful. We have completed our harvest now. All the cells are back into their cell form position. This is the frame we just were harvesting, and you can see the bees are busy starting to chew away the wax capping. They will recoat the cells in wax. They will join the little wax bridges to complete the cell shape, draw their wax out further, then start depositing nectar, and the whole process starts again. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you very much for watching and all of your great comments, and also a huge thank you to all of those that are chiming in, helping answer people's questions. It's amazing to be able to share knowledge on a global scale with our audience is all around the world in just about every country. So thank you very much for chiming in there, and let us know if there's anything in particular you'd like us to cover. And we'll be back next week, same time, with another show and tell. Hopefully it won't be raining next week. It's a rainy day here, and that's why we're on the balcony harvesting. But hopefully next week we'll be back with another show and tell, and perhaps we'll show you our new super lifter invention and how easy it makes looking after your bees by opening up the hive like a box and getting right into your brood nest. Thanks for watching. Same time next week.